Hey everyone, it's Saturday night, January the 6th, and I'm going to play this little clip because this is from this past Thursday service up in Graham. And so I'm going to let you hear this and then we'll go from there.
First of all, I want to mention Soulwinning for Saturday will be here in the chapel, 10:30. Bring your kids if they'll be quiet enough. And also bring your devices for Breeze business. Amen. So we want to make a step further in that as we have come by leaps and bounds. Well, preacher, I don't know if I can handle that online stuff. You deal with She and Amazon and everything else. You get it all figured out when you're trying to buy something.
Okay, let me address something first. He mentioned something in here about bring your devices, and they're going to go further in something called Breeze. So as soon as I heard this, I went and looked in my app store to see if there was a Breeze app for church management or something. And sure enough, there was. And then I went to the website, and so that's what some of these screenshots are. Now, I cut off the whole portion where he talks about, you figure it out when you want to buy something online from Amazon or other websites, and you can figure out the code and do all that. You know, there isn't even an attitude. He just lumps everybody the same if they have expressed issues or maybe grumblings about it. And instead of saying, hey, it's not a big deal, there'll be people there to help you if you need help with it. But that's not how they do in NTCC. So as soon as I was listening to this, I immediately thought of something. And one of my first things that I've thought for a very long time is that they call invitation soul winning, because they're not meeting on a Saturday morning in Graham to do anything but go knock on doors or go ambush people somewhere. That's just the way they've always done it, and they continue to do it. This clip caused me not only to think about the fact that it's not soul winning. I guess you can define winning souls however you want, but one of the things about NTCC is that there isn't a freedom. They do not believe. Now again, I'm going to say it again. I'm speaking within the confines of what this group believes and how they take everything they believe supposedly from the King James Version of the Bible only. They're onlyists. They're KJV onlyists. That's what they believe. That's what they teach. And so within those confines, I compare what they teach and do and say just to that, not to any larger picture of belief or disbelief or dismantling anyone's faith or building up a faith or a religion or a spirituality. That is for something for each person. That's a whole other thing. I'm here to shed light on this group. Okay, and in different ways. So the thing that I thought of immediately was how that the way they go about getting people for their business, because it is a business, they will tell you it's a business. Davis taught it that it was a business, and that attitude is still in play and taught and preached today. And so everything they do is conducted around that. And so I remember the first time I was confronted by this point of view. When I first became a Christian, I was in a non-denominational, I guess maybe you'd probably call it now a charismatic church in New Jersey. But what I have to say is that there wasn't micromanagement. No one had to tell a real Christian, to talk about Jesus to people. And a natural offshoot of that is to want them to come to church with you. But if they didn't, then they didn't. If they went somewhere else, it was a matter of showing a life of Christ to others, just living it. You don't even have to think about it. It's just your natural offshoot. No one has to tell you. No one has to strong arm you. And I've told this story before, but I'm going to keep telling it because it is the spirit of this group. And that has not changed because of the preaching and the teaching that I've listened in on. It's still there. They still say these things. And so when it came time at the end of the meeting, and Kekel was asking if there was anyone that needed to be paired up because you went out in twos, just like Jehovah's Witnesses, look just like Jehovah's Witnesses. No one can dress other than, they thought they were being all light and casual with it when the men could start wearing like a tweed blazer instead of a suit. It's still projecting something different than what you probably want to. I don't know what they go out in now. I see that Kekel travels in jeans, so who knows? Maybe they have jeans and a button-down shirt. Who knows? Who cares? It's obvious what they are when they roll into a neighborhood to blitzkrieg the place. And I'm sure almost every single preacher who's actually had to go out and knock on doors or just do follow-up, whatever, in their little NTCC minister uniform, has a story about what they were mistaken for. I was telling my daughter today that when we went to Pittsburgh, while going to visit a young man in downtown Pittsburgh, in a not so great area, he looked like, I guess to this guy, he kind of was not wanting to show himself because with the trench coat, with the nice slacks and the nice shoes on and the close cropped haircut, to him he looked like undercover law enforcement or something. That's not really undercover, is it? I don't remember the exact words he used, but he was leery. And that has been played out many times over through the years. And you know it. And, it's funny to think on when you sit around and tell these stories, but it's not funny because it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous to have everybody look. It's creepy. It's so creepy that everyone loses their individuality. And then they go in mass as this group of almost robots or something. Or I've likened it to Stepford wives, Stepford ministers. I don't know. And I would say this is something to consider because I thought of this a long time ago in regards to going out the way they do and blitzing areas and ambushing people at times. I wondered if you are someone who believes that the Bible is true, that there is a day of reckoning, that you're going to have to answer for your life. I'm wondering, collectively as a group and individually as people who go along with the group and do not listen to the voice of God speaking to them, the one who supposedly called them into an individual ministry of all of their own. Collectively, though, and individually, I imagine, will there be a day where these people will have to answer for turning people off by their ridiculous business-like ways? I wonder. Because none of it is by faith. None of it is by wanting to go out to preach the gospel. So go put a tent in the back of something and go, or a canopy, and go somewhere. When I looked up the church in Hawaii where NTCC was holding the regional conference. Something I noticed, I wanted to know about the group. What do they do? They're Baptists. I reached out to find out for myself, do they believe in once saved, always saved? I didn't say who I was. I didn't even mention the group. I just asked, and the pastor just answered. He didn't say, like, why do you want to know? And he answered my questions, and that was that, and I thanked him. But I looked at the videos of the church. They were down, like, along the waterfront somewhere, which there's a lot of water in Hawaii, pretty much everywhere. And they had, like, a little canopy, or what do you call those? Yeah, sort of like canopy set up. And I think they did it around some tables and stuff, and it looked like they preached a message, and then they sat down individually with anybody who was interested, and then they sat with them and prayed with them, like individually. Since that first video that I saw of them with an outreach down along the pier, it looks like they do it in looking at the Christmas one and the January one. They do it for the fishermen there. That's probably why it's called Seafarers Ministry. And a lot of them are Filipinos who work on the ships. And I think that's pretty cool that he has an outreach like that. Looks like they have food afterwards and all, but I'm going to share that video on my Facebook page. This way I can just share from their page to mine. And I'm not endorsing the church there or anything. I'm just showing a variation. I'm showing something that comes across more like soul winning. It's like they're just trying to go, like, statistically, yes, if you start to go blitz an area, you're going to maybe get some people that want to come out. But do they come back? Clearly from the pews, they do not. And very likely word is out there about this group. I mean, they've been written about online by local newspapers and everything. So I just think, does it never occur to them? The leadership, the board of directors, where is that in the Bible? Crying out loud. Do they ever say, man, we're responsible for not doing this right. We shouldn't be throwing up buildings and requiring people who visit them to pay. We should just take it to the streets all over the world. I went on their website to see how many states even had a preacher there. There's quite a number without. I'm going to dig those numbers out because I have a separate video that I want to do for that. And then there's a lot of states, if they have one, they just have one. And around the world, it's the same places pretty much. So why don't they pick up? Now, you do have limitations with stuff like that, but everybody can get a license to go just hold an event somewhere and preach. And if people are earnest and want to know about God, that should be the thing, not, well, we want you to come to our church because we really need you to pay tithe. That's what it's about. That if you fool yourself to think it's anything else, the dynamics of this group would look way different if it was based on faith and prayer and really earnestness for souls. That gets doused, that fire within and that desire to reach people by the dynamic of this group, by the indoctrination. You have to do it their way or it's the highway. And we're going to look at that in a moment when we look at their Soul Winners Guidebook. And also along the lines with having to answer for how you go about inviting, because it's not soul winning, it's inviting. There is the issue of how you look as well and how you put people off. So it's not just the act of what you're doing, it's how you look when you do it. And so there are things like that. And then I've taken this screenshot from Devonshire's blog, which it looks like it ended before 2020. definitely. I don't mean ended like it's not there any longer, but he hasn't added to it. Anyway, I found this story that Devonshire told about going to get a haircut. So you have to ask, how is that helpful in any way? And even if they've lightened up on what you can wear, people know what's going on when they're in their neighborhood. Isn't there a point where you're like, man, everybody thinks we're JWs or we're police or we're, the tax man, the revenuer, all these things, other than just a normal person who just wants to tell you about God. No, it has to be done in this formatted way with a uniform. So picking up on the story that I started ages ago and sidetracked myself about a Saturday morning soul winning meeting back in like the end of 2004, beginning of 2005. So in the true style of Mike Keckle, he saw that that Bobby Fears had stood up, meaning she needed a partner. Well, her husband was sitting right next to her, so Keckle was baffled and asked, this is in front of everybody. This is in front of a lot of people. The whole, the place was pretty full on a Saturday morning. And he explained that he needed to have his car fixed. And here was Keckle giving that couple a hard time. This man who's in charge of his family, taking care of them, is trying to get the car fixed on the only day he can do it. It's so ridiculous. It was so obscene. It was obscene to humiliate him that way and call into question his dedication and everything. NTCC loves to make everybody feel like they're on a slippery slope. You're just one step away from being away from God or from moving away from God. And on a Saturday, you work all week, you have church all day on Sunday, probably was a student service that night or something, who knows? And this is what that man did to him. That's what Keckle's known for, humiliating people, just like Davis. Just like Davis. It's so gross. If it was so important to Keckle, if it was so important that these, how many doors they would have knocked on would go unknocked on, then why didn't he volunteer to take his place? Like, me and my wife will go, you and your wife go, be with your kid, take care of your car, make sure you're safe, make sure you get it done right, take the day. It's already what time in the morning? How many places are even open to take care of your car? If they could even afford that, who knows? There was a lot of, let's say, DIY car hacks that went on back in the day. Just had a baby, and anyone who's had a child knows. Of course, Keckle, even though he's had a child at the time, he never had to worry about transporting his son in a car seat, going from brother and sister to brother and sister to find somebody to bring him to church and back, and these meetings back and forth. He didn't have to get permission to do any of that. No, but he's going to force it on other people because the man has never started a church from scratch. He doesn't know diddly squat about it. And that's why it's all conducted like a business. That's not what this endeavor is supposed to be. But don't tell them. That's fine with me. Okay, let's press on here. I did want to get started on the Soul Winner's Guidebook. It reminds me of what was the name of that book? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Seems like it should have an echo behind it. Soul Winner's Guidebook. Anyway, it's getting late, or early, getting punchy. Okay, so before I get to that, something else that I thought about with all this soul winning stuff that they call soul winning, but it's invitation. And I'm trying to make this very quick, but I'm not trying to cram this all into one video, so it'll spill over, and that's fine with me. I believe these types of stories resonate. I'm not unique in the stories the things that I've experienced with this group. So when I first got invited to an NTCC church, it was a serviceman's home begun by the Ashmores in the Philippines, right at the beginning of 1989. I think March 89 was when I first started attending. And looking back, the thing that I can honestly say about them, and I've mentioned before, their humility, and I've shared some stories about them, but also just their faith, their belief in prayer, their belief in God doing the work, that you don't do it by works, that they had a supreme passion for winning souls. I say winning souls because we were never involved in knocking on doors or ambushing people anywhere. That wasn't how things were done. Now, did we bring people out to church and they were run off a lot of times? Yes. A lot of people didn't want to hear about the baptism of the Holy Ghost. A lot of people didn't want to hear about holiness and all that. But aside from that, let's just put that aside and let's just make the comparisons and show a line that was drawn in the sand, meaning with these people it was done this way, with these other people it was done another way, all in the same group. If you don't have an organization behind you that's like, well, we're looking for results, brethren. That's what Olson always said. We're going to be looking for results. What are results measured by? It doesn't make any sense. None of it does. Especially when you look at Graham. If they're the model, if they're the mothership, it ain't happening there. And when you come along as some highfalutin board member and you say to these men and women out on the field, we're going to be looking for results, and if we don't, you're going to hear about it. I mean, they start knocking heads, thumping heads. That's what Kekel called it at the conference, the regional conference, during the one morning session in Memphis. He was talking about flow charts. He's talking about how these people were going to have to answer for, what was expected of them. That's not how you do it. By saying that to people, you are squashing. It would seem, if you measure all of this activity, all of this business talk against the Bible, does not match up at all, and you're putting these crazy parameters on these preachers. They can't even have an individualistic calling from God that they extend out, that they employ, that they obey, because NTCC absolutely takes their foot and smashes it down into the ground. That's what they do. It is not about faith. It is not about obeying and doing what you feel you're called to do. You cannot do it in this group. In the Philippines, under the Ashmores, it was not this whole concerted effort, meaning had to be written down, had to be followed up, written down, followed up, written down, followed up, cross off, give a report. Now you need all these middlemen to handle all this stuff. Well, you wonder what these people do in the office? Good luck trying to figure it out, because it involves tithes and monies and reports from churches. If you don't have all these buildings and mortgages and this tithe nonsense and back tithe. You don't need any of that. You don't. Just go do what you were called to do. Correction. What you say you were called to do. Okay, back to how things were done in the Philippines. And we just naturally talked to people and naturally brought people out. We weren't recording them. There were no flow charts, man. There were no flow charts. So thankful for that. What a waste. What a colossal waste of time. That's what businesses do. Why does the work of God need that? People are either there or they're not. But when you have a mortgage to pay, well, then all of a sudden you care. And when you're twisting tithe out of people and wringing them dry and doing the back tithe shuffle, well, then there's an incentive to come down hard on people who are not performing to do things a certain way and behave a certain way. Anyway, the Ashmores left us high and dry. Well, they were going to be going somewhere else to start a church, which was, I believe it was Okinawa right after that, because several of us would take Space A flights up there to visit them. We did that after the church was pulled from the Philippines because 2 Americans had been killed outside the base. And so for safety's sake, because they were sitting there like a sore thumb as Americans off base, and they were bringing those of us who lived off base on base into prefabricated housing that they were slapping together. For me, after the Ashmores left and the other couple came in, I would be willing to go take a Space A flight up every weekend or every other weekend to Okinawa just to go be in church with them at the time. That's how I was feeling, because I was really on the verge of skedaddling. And anyway, I think of this a lot when I think of this next part. So after they left, now this was Ted and Jean Keys. They were just fresh out of Bible school. And it was awful. It was really awful. And I think several of us banded together and we just kept thinking, well, we're hopefully going to be going to Bible school. And so wherever the Ashmores are, there's got to be other people that are like them, right? I don't know what we were thinking, but that was the time to bail. That was definitely time, because that was the writing on the wall. That was every red flag about this organization. And so when they came over, there was the short overlap with the Ashmores, and you could see the difference in them. And they kept bragging about how they made it through Bible school and how hard it was. And they were talking up Davis. They were... So as soon as the Ashmores left, Jean Keys was known for making some snide remarks. She had her nice moments, but she had a lot to say. She had a lot to say. And she said it. What happened was, we had one of our first little meetings, and so we were to have a little notebook and a pen on us, and we were going to start going out 2 by 2 to invite people to church. So Jean and I would stand at the mailboxes on base and talk to GIs as they came to get their mail. Like, they can't even do that in peace, because here we are. And honestly, I don't even know if that was cool with the base or not, if they even checked. I have no idea. But we would do that, and I remember one time standing there at the mailbox with her, and she was talking about things, and then she said to me something like, would you ever do such and such to get out of the military early to go to Bible school? And I said, no, I wouldn't do that. And she said, well, that's the right answer. I was testing you because you can't go to Bible school if you're dishonorably discharged. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, what is this? Like pop quizzes and notebooks and pens and required stuff to have to be a certain place, a certain time to invite people. And then the people that I had already I knew from work, or they were associates from other squadrons, or I just met them on base or something, or I knew them from attending a different church before this one. And this was near the end of 1989. Then they wanted me to start following up on them and recording it. And if after it was 3 times, if they hadn't come out, we were supposed to write them off the list. That was it. And it's like, I'm not writing people off a list. It was so cold and calculating and businesslike and just write them off. Like, that's not even how it works. You speak to people, you're normal with them. There isn't this push or ambushing or knocking on barracks doors. It was embarrassing. I was being forced to go with Jean to follow up on people that I personally knew. And if I said, well, no, I've already talked to, I know where I'm at with these people. They were pushing it to go anyway. And you feel like an idiot showing up at the door with this woman who looks like, you know what you look like when you're in NTCC. And it felt awkward, and I started really, truly losing people. And the pressure was on. We had to come up with names every week. We had to be writing this down. We had to be recording when we go and what the results were and everything. And it felt unnatural. It felt unloving. It felt like people are just numbers. And so near the end of, I think it was the beginning of December 1989, I had pink eye. So I was on, what they would do, there was so many epidemics of pink eye on that base. It was crazy. And once you had gotten it, you were just prone to get it again, even though it's so easy to catch. And so we were very hyper in our squadron about keeping pink eye out because you didn't want the pilots to go DNIF, which is a status of DNIF, does not include flying, meaning they can't fly for 3-4 days at a time. And so I was on quarters for 3 days at a time. Then I'd have to go back to the clinic and be seen again to check my pink eye. Well, while I was on quarters, my roommate, her TV was on. And it said something about a coup attempt against Corazon Aquino, who was the president at the time of the Philippines, and she was very pro-communism. So there were lots of problems around the base with the New People's Army marching around in Angeles City, which is the next biggest city over from the base at the time. And so we all got called into work. Like, they were like, we don't care if you have pink eye. We don't care what your problem is. Just if you're in the middle of having a baby, just get here. We need people. So I was going to be working the radios. We went to blackout mode. We had every special ops of every branch down in our helicopter squadron. We were rescue/special ops. And they were going to be getting ready to go drop down onto a building in Manila to try to squash what was going on. They were firing howitzers at Malacanang Palace and everything. It was crazy. So I was stuck in my squadron for quite a few days. And we would sleep there. Periodically, we'd run back to our barracks and get our stuff. But everybody was hunkered down there. And I started getting grief from the Keys, mostly from her, that questioning dedication because I wasn't coming out. I'm like, I can't say anything about it. I can't say what I'm involved in because it's it's classified. It's not something I can talk about. So I can't even say what's going on. And I was like, I am being hounded by these people. Like, this never happened before. And not just hounded, but interrogated. So it was obvious I was off quarters with my pink eye, even though I still had it. But I was at work. So I kept getting these. You know what it reminds me of? Oh, where is it? Okay, I'm going to post this there. I saw this poster on the NTCC Facebook page yesterday, and I thought, that's what it is. They make it seem like, oh, if you miss church, oh, then you're starting down that slope. If you don't do this, if you don't do that, then it's just leading to trouble. You can't. They do not trust anyone with their own individual salvation anywhere else but in the church. The church is the safety. It's the only safe place. You have to get to the church. You have to stand there. I'm surprised they don't have people living in there. I'm really surprised they don't. How do they trust them to go home and to be Christians? They don't trust them to talk to people. They're like children. They're really like children. They trot out, or like a little puppy, like go get the newspaper, and then they give them a treat when they come back. Go out and invite people to church. Ah, good job. Good. You are good for at least another day. Just be in church tomorrow, and be in church tomorrow night, and be in church for Bible study, and be in church on Thursday. You do that, you're good. Don't start down that slope where you don't come. And that's what she was doing to me. Oh, you're not coming. So she questioned my dedication and questioned that it seemingly was easy for me. It was easy. I was glad for the distraction of the coup attempt. I gotta tell you. I gotta be really honest here. Because they had robbed any faith, any joy, any just normalcy. Isn't all this micromanagement and judgment. Just judgment. And you bring people to church. I didn't even want to bring people to church anymore. I was barely hanging on to one to be around those people. Anyway, they wanted us to go out soul winning, inviting, and yet they couldn't even win us, and we were people who were basically on board when the Ashmores handed over the keys to them. That's funny. That pun was totally not intended, and it's 3:36 in the morning. I still pulled that out of my tired brain. Man, that's good. I'm just kidding. Anyway, yeah, they couldn't even win us, but they wanted us to go out and bring people to them so that Ted could stand there in a service and show how loose your pants could be with his pants, showing us just... Oh, my goodness. Anyway, I'm going to continue this tomorrow because I really want to dig into their whole Soul Winners guidebook. Not really sure what year it's from. Doesn't matter. It's all been the same. It's been the same. they just say things so plainly, and now they have all these charts and paperwork. Do you know how much time people are spending between driving back and forth to church and Graham? And it's not just Graham, it's all over, it's all the churches, filling out this paperwork. Colossal waste of time. Waste when they could just be out there being normal and they could actually secure friendships and people who admire their life and would want to come. I want to make a correction there because I'm falling prey to the whole church organization thing, and that is no one has to go to a church to be saved. Someone can be saved right on their front step. If you say, hey, I saw your paper was thrown in the road, here it is, and you start talking to them, and anything can happen, especially when you believe it can. But these folks have you so indoctrinated. They had all of us that way, to believe our job is to invite, and then we get them in the church, and then the power of the Holy Ghost works the magic, right? They don't have to do that. That's why each person is a soul winner, or can be, according to the KJV. Don't have to go to a building. They don't have to go to a building to be saved, to do anything. And if they want to go, that's up to them when or how often. And maybe people would be more inclined if you weren't forcing them. Nobody wants to be forced, especially when you tie into it that their dedication is in question, and that their love of God is in question, and that they shouldn't be forsaking the assembling of themselves. And I'll say it again, it doesn't say how often. You do it when you can and when you want to. You force people to be around you. It's crazy. That's just fake and phony stuff. Good night or good morning, whichever. And later today, we'll dig into the Soul Winner's Guidebook.